Hi there. Welcome to Dreamy Histories channel. Tonight, we're venturing back 10,000 years to walk alongside your ancient ancestors as they stumble through humanity's most chaotic transition period. Picture yourself right now, not scrolling through your phone in bed, but crouched in the morning mist of ancient Mesopotamia, your stomach growling as you eye a patch of wild wheat that might, just might, save you from another failed mammoth hunt. Here's the reality check. You probably won't survive your first winter because you have absolutely no idea that those grass seeds you're collecting will literally reshape the entire trajectory of human civilization. So, before you get comfortable, take a moment to like the video and subscribe, but only if you genuinely enjoy what I do here. Drop a comment with where you're listening from and what time it is there. I love seeing our global prehistoric tribe gather for story time. All right, let's begin the story. You're living through the Neolithic Revolution, though you definitely don't call it that. You just know that chasing animals across the landscape is getting really old, and your back hurts. The Ice Age is ending. The massive glaciers are retreating, and the world is transforming into something warmer, wetter, and surprisingly more complicated. You've noticed that when you accidentally drop seeds near your favorite camping spots, plants grow there the next season. This observation seems minor, but it's about to change everything. Your daily routine is pure chaos because you're essentially running a beta test for civilization. Morning starts with you checking the wild grains you've been half-heartedly tending. Historians still argue whether early agriculture was intentional or just happy accidents repeated enough times. You're not exactly farming yet. It's more like aggressive gardening with a side of confusion. You scatter seeds, pray to whatever spirits control plant growth, and hope for the best. Meanwhile, your cousin's still out there trying to spear the last few mammoths, stubbornly insisting that this putting seeds in dirt thing is just a phase. The weird part? You're actually working harder than your hunter-gatherer parents ever did. Anthropologists love pointing out that early farmers had worse nutrition, more diseases, and longer working hours than hunters. You're grinding grain until your arms burn, dealing with pests eating your precious plants, and wondering why you thought this was a good idea. Your teeth are already showing signs of wear from all that stone-ground grain, and you won't even live long enough to appreciate that you're inventing bread. But here's where it gets interesting. You're not alone in this agricultural experiment. All across the Fertile Crescent, from modern-day Iraq to Turkey to Iran, other groups are having the same aha moments about seeds and soil. Some villages are growing wheat, others are focusing on barley, and those weirdos near the Mediterranean are obsessing over lentils. Nobody's sharing notes yet, but you're all collectively stumbling toward the same revolution. The mainstream historical fact: the Neolithic Revolution happened independently in at least 7 different regions worldwide. The quirky tidbit: some groups tried farming, decided it sucked, and went back to hunting for a few more centuries. Your social life is transforming too. Instead of roaming in small bands of maybe 25 relatives, you're now stuck in one place with the same 50 people year-round. This proximity is breeding both innovation and irritation. You're developing new ways to store grain. Clay pots are so hot right now, but you're also dealing with humanity's first property disputes. That fertile patch by the river, yeah, 3 families claim it's theirs. You're inventing both agriculture and lawyers simultaneously. The animals around you are noticing these changes. Wolves hang around your settlements, attracted by garbage and grain-stealing rodents. Wild boars root through your refuse piles. Aurochs, those massive wild cattle, graze near your fields. You don't know it yet, but your grandchildren will be riding horses and milking cows. Right now, though, you're just trying to keep deer from eating your barley experiments while simultaneously hoping to spear one for dinner. The irony isn't lost on you. You're standing at the base of a hill in southeastern Turkey, staring up at something that shouldn't exist. Massive T-shaped pillars, some weighing as much as 10 modern cars, tower above you in perfect circles. Your grandfather told you his grandfather helped drag these stones here, back when the hill was bare and the stars told them where to place each monolith. This is Göbekli Tepe, though you just call it the Navel or Potbelly Hill, and you're part of the workforce that's been maintaining and expanding this impossible complex for generations. The mainstream fact that drives archaeologists crazy: this temple complex predates pottery, metallurgy, and even full-scale agriculture. You're essentially building humanity's first cathedral while still figuring out which berries won't kill you. The stones are carved with writhing snakes, prowling lions, and scorpions the size of your torso, animals that prowl through your nightmares in your backyard with equal frequency. Some pillars have arms and hands carved into them, suggesting these aren't just rocks, but stylized beings, perhaps ancestors or gods you're still in the process of inventing. Here's the part that would blow modern minds. You don't live here. Nobody does. You've walked for days from your seasonal camp, carrying dried meat and gathered plants, to participate in what historians still argue whether to call a religious festival, astronomical observatory, or the world's first Comic-Con for hunter-gatherers. Hundreds of people from different tribes converge here during specific times of year, and the logistics alone are staggering. Someone has to organize feeding all these workers. Someone else manages the stone carving specialists. And presumably, someone's in charge of making sure nobody drops a 10-ton pillar on the crowd. You're part of a work crew today, tasked with carving another relief into Pillar 43. The master carver, a wiry woman with obsidian-scarred hands, traces the outline of a vulture with its wings spread wide. She mutters something about the stars and the vulture's position, but you're focused on not screwing up your assigned section, the bird's left wing. The stone dust makes you cough, and you're using tools that would make modern sculptors weep, flint blades and stone hammers that need constant resharpening. One slip, and you've ruined months of work. Plus, you'll probably get sacrificed to whatever deity this vulture represents. The quirky tidbit archaeologists don't advertise. The whole complex was deliberately buried around 8000 BCE. Your great-great-grandchildren will literally bury this place under tons of soil and debris, carefully filling in each enclosure with a mixture of stones, flint tools, and animal bones. It's like they're putting the temple to sleep, preserving it for future discovery. Nobody knows why. Maybe the magic ran out. Maybe the social system that supported such massive construction projects collapsed. Or maybe they just got bored and decided agriculture was more interesting than hauling rocks. Between carving sessions, you're participating in feasts that would make modern festivals jealous. The bones scattered around the site tell the story. Wild gazelle, aurochs, various birds, and enough foxes to suggest either a massive fur trade or some seriously specific religious symbolism. You're grinding wild wheat on stone mortars, brewing what might charitably be called beer, though it's more like alcoholic gruel, and sharing stories with people whose languages you only half understand. The hand gestures get pretty creative after the fermented beverages come out. What's really baking everyone's noodles is how you're coordinating all this without writing, formal leadership, or even permanent settlements. Someone mentions that their cousin's tribe is building something similar a few valleys over, maybe Karahantepe or habits of Antepesi, and you nod like this is normal. It's not normal. You're participating in a construction phenomenon that won't be repeated at this scale for thousands of years. The pyramids are still 7,000 years in your future. But you're already solving complex engineering problems through pure communal stubbornness and possibly shamanic visions. The spiritual aspect permeates everything. Those animal carvings aren't random. They're arranged in specific patterns that might represent constellations, seasonal markers, or the world's first attempt at graphic novels. You wear fox teeth around your neck, not because it's fashionable, but because the fox knows secrets about moving between worlds. The vulture on your assigned pillar, it probably carries souls to the afterlife, which is why you're being extra careful with those wing details. Mess up a sacred vulture, and you might end up personally testing its soul-carrying capabilities. As the sun sets behind the carved pillars, casting shadows that seem to make the animals dance, you share fermented grain drink with workers from 6 different tribes, and tomorrow you'll head back to your seasonal rounds of hunting and gathering. But for now, you're part of something bigger, something that shouldn't be possible, yet somehow exists. Rising from this hilltop like humanity's first attempt at touching the sky. You're crouched behind a boulder, watching the wolf pack that's been following your hunting party for 3 days now. They're not exactly stalking you. It's more like they're waiting for you to screw up and leave some mammoth scraps behind. The boldest one, a grey female with one torn ear, maintains eye contact like she's negotiating a business deal. You toss a chunk of gristle in her direction, and that's how it starts. The most important partnership in human history, born from mutual opportunism and a shared love of meat. Your tribe calls them the Watchers or Shadow Runners, and opinions are deeply divided about whether they're good luck or just fuzzy freeloaders. Your grandmother swears they led her to a wounded deer once, while your uncle insists they're just biding their time before eating everyone. The truth, as you're discovering, lies somewhere in between. These aren't the majestic wolves of distant forests. These are the scraggly, desperate ones who figured out that humans equal food opportunities. Natural selection is about to get weird. The mainstream fact is that dogs were humanity's first domestic animal, predating agriculture by potentially thousands of years. But here's what archaeologists argue about. Were they domesticated once or multiple times? The genetic evidence is messier than your hair after a month-long hunting expedition. Some camps claim domestication happened in Europe, others insist East Asia, and a few rebels suggest it happened everywhere simultaneously because, let's face it, wolves and humans were made for each other. You've noticed that one torn ear, yes, you named her, don't judge, has started anticipating your hunting patterns. When you grab your spear and gathering bag, she perks up and alerts her pack. They follow at a respectful distance, close enough to capitalize on any kills, far enough to bolt if you turn aggressive. It's like having a furry surveillance team that occasionally helps corner prey. Your success rate has actually improved since they started tagging along, though you'd never admit this to wolf skeptic uncle. The transformation happens gradually. One harsh winter, when game is scarce and everyone's ribs are showing, you find one torn ear's pups sheltering in a cave near your camp. They're maybe 6 weeks old, all oversized paws and attitude. Instead of chasing them off, you do something revolutionary. You feed them. Not much, just some bone marrow and sinew, but enough to imprint the idea that humans equal survival. Your sister thinks you've lost your mind. They're going to eat us in our sleep, she mutters. But she also notices the pups are kind of cute when they're wrestling over a deer knuckle, the quirky tidbit that would shock modern dog lovers. These early proto-dogs probably weren't that different from their wolf ancestors for thousands of years. You're not getting a golden retriever here. You're getting a slightly less murderous wolf that tolerates your presence in exchange for food security. They're still capable of taking down a human if hungry enough. And more than one tribe has stories about their tame wolves reverting to wild behavior during famines. It's a work in progress. What's fascinating is how quickly both species adapt to each other. The wolves who survive around humans are the ones with lower flight distances, higher tolerance for our nonsense, and possibly a genetic mutation that makes them slightly better at digesting the starchy foods we're starting to experiment with. Meanwhile, you're unconsciously selecting for wolves who are better at reading human body language. That head tilt your future golden retriever will perfect. One Tournier's grand pup is already working on the prototype when you talk to him. Historians still argue whether early dogs were primarily hunting partners, guard animals, or walking emergency food supplies. The answer is probably yes to all three. You've seen tribes use their semi-tame wolves to track wounded game through dense forest. At night, they bark at approaching predators or strangers, giving you precious seconds to grab weapons. And during the last severe famine, well, let's just say not all the wolf friends made it through winter. Survival ethics are complicated when you're one failed hunt away from starvation. The real game changer comes when one torn ear has another litter, this time denning suspiciously close to your camp. These pups grow up thinking human scent is normal, that spear-carrying bipeds are just weird pack members. Your nephew, barely walking himself, toddles over to the den and, before anyone can stop him, starts playing with a pup. Instead of tragedy, you witness the beginning of interspecies friendship. The pup grows up following the boy everywhere, sleeping curled against him during cold nights, learning to respond to human sounds that will eventually become commands. By the time you're teaching your grandchildren to hunt, the wolves aren't wolves anymore. They're something new, something in between. Their skulls are slightly smaller, their teeth less pronounced, and, weirdest of all, some of them have floppy ears and patchy coloring. You've created a new species through the power of patience, food scraps, and the universal truth that everyone needs a friend. Even if that friend occasionally howls at the moon and smells like wet fur and regret, you're climbing down a wooden ladder into your home, which sounds normal until you realize the ladder starts at your roof, because that's the only way in or out. Welcome to Jericho, the world's first experiment in what happens when humans stop wandering and start getting real. The year is somewhere around 8000 BCE, and you're living in a circular mud brick house crammed against dozens of others like cells in a very dirty honeycomb. Privacy is a concept that won't be invented for thousands of years, and right now, your neighbor's goat is trying to eat your roof. The mainstream historical fact is that Jericho represents one of humanity's earliest permanent settlements, complete with the world's first known defensive wall. But here's what they don't emphasize in textbooks. You built that wall not just for defense, but possibly for flood control, which means you're simultaneously inventing civil engineering and learning why you should have paid more attention to seasonal water patterns. The wall is 26 feet tall in some places, and you helped stack those stones while complaining about your back the entire time. Your daily routine would drive modern city dwellers insane. You wake up to the sound of someone grinding grain directly above your head. That's your upstairs neighbor starting breakfast on their floor, which is your ceiling. The acoustic situation in prehistoric Jericho is basically one continuous grinding, crying, arguing, laughing cacophony from dawn to dusk. You've developed the ability to identify whose baby is crying from 3 houses away, not because you're helpful, but because you're taking bets on how long before the parents lose it. The quirky tidbit historians love to mention: your community keeps plastered skulls of deceased relatives under the floor. Not everyone gets this honor. Archaeologists still argue whether it's for beloved elders or important leaders. But right now, you're sitting about 3 feet above Great Uncle Grok's polished cranium. The eyes are filled with shells, giving him a perpetual look of surprise that honestly captures his personality perfectly. Sometimes during family arguments, someone will dramatically stomp on the floor above his burial spot, claiming Grok's spirit supports their position. It's the world's first form of supernatural gaslighting. Water management is your constant obsession. The spring that made this location attractive is both blessing and curse. During the dry season, everyone's competing for access, leading to the kind of petty disputes that will someday inspire property law. You've developed an elaborate system of who gets water when, based on a combination of family seniority, house proximity to the spring, and who won the last wrestling match. Your cousin thinks he's slick building an unauthorized channel to his house, but the water committee, 3 old women who've been here since the first brick was laid, shut that down real quick. The social dynamics are intense. You're living closer to more people than humans have ever experienced, and it's creating whole new categories of problems. That cute person 3 houses over. You see them every single day, multiple times, in various states of undress because privacy doesn't exist. Dating in Jericho is basically a spectator sport. Everyone knows everyone's business, from who's sneaking around with whom to which family's grain stores are running low. Gossip isn't entertainment. It's a survival mechanism for navigating this dense social maze. Your town meetings are evolutionary pressure in action. Imagine trying to coordinate defensive wall maintenance with 500 people who all have opinions and no formal leadership structure. The shouting matches are legendary. Someone suggests making bricks a different shape for better stacking. And suddenly, it's a 3-hour debate about tradition versus innovation, with several fistfights and someone's mother-in-law brought to tears. Historians still argue whether early settlements had chiefs, councils, or just whoever could yell the loudest. And honestly, living here, you're not sure either. The defensive aspect of life is real but weird. That massive wall and tower, you've used them exactly twice for actual defense. Once against a neighboring group who wanted your spring, and once against what turned out to be traders who just had really aggressive negotiation tactics. Mostly, the fortifications serve as a giant, "We're serious about staying here" statement to the universe. The tower doubles as a ceremonial space where important decisions are made. Astronomical observations happen, and teenagers sneak off to make terrible decisions. Trade is transforming your worldview. Merchants arrive with obsidian from hundreds of miles away, shells from distant seas, and stories that sound like fantasy. They set up in the central plaza, and suddenly your insular little town becomes connected to a network spanning half the known world. You're trading local bitumen, natural tar that's great for waterproofing, for things you never knew you needed. Your daughter just traded 3 baskets of grain for a piece of malachite that serves no practical purpose, but makes her eyes look amazing when she crushes it into powder. As you lie on your roof at night, the only place with any privacy, watching the stars while surrounded by the sounds of hundreds of people living their lives, you're part of something unprecedented. This experiment in permanent settlement is messy, complicated, and occasionally makes you long for the simple days of following herds. But it's also creating possibilities. your nomadic ancestors never imagined. Specialized crafts, accumulated wealth, and the chance to build something that lasts longer than a season. Even if that something is currently being eaten by your neighbor's goat, you're belly down in the permafrost mud, trying to look like a rock while a woolly rhinoceros the size of a small house munches vegetation 30 feet away. Your hunting party has been tracking this absolute unit for 2 days, and now you're discovering why most rhinos in your time period die of old age rather than spear wounds. The beast's fur is so thick your projectiles might as well be mosquito bites, and those horns could kebab your entire family in one irritated charge. Someone behind you whispers that maybe you should go back to hunting regular deer, and you're seriously considering it. The mainstream fact every kid learns is that humans hunted Ice Age megafauna to extinction, but living through it, you know it's more complicated. These aren't docile cow-sized targets, they're furry tanks with tempers. That ground sloth your grandfather boasted about killing, it had claws longer than your forearm and could rear up taller than 2 humans stacked. The only reason he succeeded was because it got stuck in a tar pit, and even then, it took the entire tribe poking it with spears for 3 hours while it swung those murder claws around like a very angry windmill. Your toolkit for taking down these monsters would make modern hunters weep. You've got spears with stone points that shatter on impact half the time, atlatls that increase your throwing distance but require the coordination of a circus performer, and the eternal optimism of someone who hasn't quite grasped mortality yet. The quirky tidbit? Some of your crew are experimenting with poison-tipped arrows using fermented plant toxins, but the dosage calculations are more art than science. Last month, someone used too little and just made a mammoth extremely grumpy. You're still running from that mistake. Climate change is your invisible hunting partner. The ice sheets are retreating, but not in a nice, predictable way. Some years are warmer and wetter, turning frozen plains into swamps where mastodons get bogged down. Easy hunting if you don't mind chest-deep mud and the very real possibility of joining your prey in becoming future fossils. Other years snap back cold, and you're tracking herds across ice bridges that might or might not exist next season. The landscape is having an identity crisis, and you're just trying to eat. Here's what historians still argue about. How much did human hunting contribute to megafauna extinction versus climate change? Living it. You'd say both. Plus some factors nobody's considering, like how those giant beavers, yes, beaver the size of bears, are disappearing partly because their dam-building megaprojects can't keep up with rapidly changing water levels, or how the shift in vegetation means the giant herbivores are clustering around shrinking patches of their preferred plants, making them easier targets but also devastating those plant populations. You're witnessing an ecological Jenga tower seconds before collapse. The actual hunting techniques are equal parts strategy and controlled chaos. For mammoths, you prefer the cliff drive method, which sounds organized until you're actually trying to convince a matriarch and her family to run toward a precipice. It takes days of preparation, building drive lanes with rocks and brush, positioning screamers and fire wavers at key points, and praying to whatever spirits control mammoth psychology. When it works, you eat like kings for weeks. When it fails, you've just spent a week arranging landscaping for no reason while mammoths laugh at you from a distance. Your relationship with these creatures goes beyond pure predation. You wear their fur, use their bones for tools and construction, and even make musical instruments from their remains. That mammoth ivory flute your sister plays during ceremonies, it came from a bull you helped take down 3 winters ago. You remember how its eye looked at you in those final moments. Intelligent, aware, resigned, There's a reason your people perform rituals before and after hunts, asking forgiveness and giving thanks. You're not just killing animals, you're dismantling mountains of flesh that have personalities and family structures as complex as your own. The smaller megafauna are actually scarier. Cave bears make modern grizzlies look like teddy bears, and they have an annoying habit of living in the exact caves you want for winter shelter. Negotiating eviction with a bear that weighs half a ton requires creativity, patience, and acceptance that you might need to find a different cave. The giant elk with antlers spanning 12 feet. Beautiful to see. Nightmare to hunt in forested areas where those antlers turn into battering rams. Your brother has a permanent limp from misjudging an elk's turning radius. As you continue watching the woolly rhino, weighing whether your children eating tonight is worth the significant chance of being impaled, you notice something troubling. There used to be more of them. The herds that once blackened the plains are now scattered groups. The old hunters talk about days when you could feel mammoth herds walking from miles away, when giant ground sloths were so common they were considered pest animals. Those days are fading like warmth from a dying fire. You're living through the last act of a play that started when ice covered the world, and whether you realize it or not, you're helping write the final scene. You're deep in the cave, so far from daylight that the darkness feels alive, pressing against your eyes like black wool. The only light comes from the pine torch your mentor holds. It's smoke making you dizzy. Or maybe that's the mushrooms you chewed an hour ago finally kicking in. She's leading you to the holy chamber, the one where the walls dance with painted aurochs and horses, where your grandfather's grandfather first spoke to the spirits that live between stone and soul. Your initiation is about to begin. And honestly, you're not sure if you're ready to see what your ancestors saw. The mainstream fact is that cave art from this period represents humanity's first artistic traditions. But down here in the flickering shadows, you know it's so much more. These aren't decorations or prehistoric doodles. They're portals, prayers, and power made visible. The ochre and charcoal images seem to breathe in the torchlight, and that's before the psychoactive plants really start working. Your mentor, a woman whose eyes hold too much knowledge for comfort, begins humming a rhythm that matches your heartbeat. Or maybe your heartbeat is matching her rhythm. It's getting hard to tell where you end and the cave begins. She hands you the prepared pigments, red ochre mixed with animal fat and saliva, charcoal ground with cave water, white clay that leaves your fingers tingling. The quirky tidbit anthropologists love to mention is that many painted caves show evidence of acoustic optimization. Your ancestors chose chambers where sound behaves strangely, where echoes loop back as whispers or drums create standing waves that make your chest cavity resonate. As your mentor starts chanting, you understand why. Her voice splits into harmonics, seeming to come from the painted animals themselves. You're not just here to look at pretty pictures. This is about becoming a bridge between the human world and the spirit realm. And that requires serious chemical assistance. The mushrooms are just the beginning. Your mentor burns herbs that make the air thick and strange, applies a paste to your temples that makes your skin feel like it's dissolving. Historians still argue whether shamanic practices were universal or varied by region. But right now, you're too busy watching the painted horses gallop across the cave wall to care about academic debates. The painting technique itself is a ritual. You don't just slap paint on rock. Each mark requires permission from the cave spirits. Your mentor shows you how to blow pigment through hollow bird bones to create the negative handprints that mark human presence. When you place your hand on the cold stone and feel the paint settling around it, you're not just making art. You're claiming kinship with everyone who's left their hand here before. a chain of shamans stretching back to the first human who realized caves were doorways to other worlds. What really scrambles your sense of reality is how the images interact with the cave's natural features. That bulge in the rock becomes a bison's shoulder. The crack running through the stone transforms into a spear piercing a reindeer's heart. Your ancestors didn't impose images onto flat surfaces. They revealed the animals already living in the stone, waiting to be released through pigment and prayer. As the mushrooms peak, you swear you can feel the rock breathing, the painted animals' hearts beating in rhythm with yours. The sexual imagery mixed with the animals makes more sense in your altered state. Those vulvas carved into the stone aren't pornographic. They're creation portals, the place where spirit animals emerge into the physical world. The human figures with animal heads aren't costumes, but actual transformations. Shamans mid-journey between species. Your mentor has antlers strapped to her head, and in the dancing torch shadow, you're no longer sure where the antlers end, and she begins. She moves like a deer, breathes like a deer, and when she looks at you, her eyes reflect light like a prey animal. Time stops meaning anything down here. You might have been painting for hours or days when your mentor finally guides you to the deepest chamber, where the really weird stuff lives. Geometric patterns that hurt to look at. Handprints with too many or too few fingers. Creatures that combine parts from animals that shouldn't exist in the same epoch. The historians who think ancient humans were just recording their environment have never been this deep. Never felt the cave spirits editing reality in real time. Your masterpiece, if you can call your shaky, drug-fueled attempt at capturing a vision in ochre a masterpiece, is a deer that's also a woman, that's also the constellation you call the hunter's prize. The antlers branch into star patterns. The human hands end in hooves, and the eyes are hollow circles that seem to follow viewers through time. Your mentor nods approval, then does something that will haunt your dreams forever. She licks the fresh paint, mixing your art with her saliva, and speaks a name in a language that predates words. The dear woman's stars shimmer and step off the wall for just a moment before settling back into stone. As you stumble back toward daylight, forever changed, paint under your fingernails and visions still sparking behind your eyelids, you understand why only some people can be shamans. Most humans live in one world. You now live in several, and keeping them straight is going to be a full-time job. You're about to enter your house through the only door available, a hole in the roof, when you notice your neighbor already scrambling down their ladder 2 roofs over. This is Çatalhöyük, where personal space is a foreign concept, and your commute involves parkour across your entire neighborhood. The year is roughly 7,500 BCE, and you're living in what might be humanity's first apartment complex. If apartment complexes were designed by people who'd never heard of hallways, streets, or the revolutionary concept of ground-level entrances. The mainstream archaeological fact is that Çatalhöyük housed up to 8,000 people without any apparent streets, public squares, or ground-level connections between buildings. But living here, you know the really weird part. This architectural insanity actually works, your daily workout involves climbing up your ladder, crossing several roofs while dodging drying grain and sunbathing grandmothers, then dropping through someone else's ceiling hole to visit friends. It's like someone played urban planner while thoroughly intoxicated and everyone just went with it. Speaking of ceiling holes, yours doubles as your window, chimney, and garbage disposal. The smoke situation is exactly as bad as you'd imagine. Your eyes water constantly. everything you own smells like burnt dung, and your lungs are developing that special wheeze that marks long-time Çatalhöyük residents. The quirky tidbit historians love? Despite living in what's essentially a human beehive, there's no evidence of central authority or social hierarchy. No palace, no temple, no chief's mansion. Just thousands of people collectively agreeing that rooftop travel and smoke inhalation are perfectly reasonable lifestyle choices. The real mindbender is what's under your floor. Remember sweet grandma, who used to make the best fermented grain cakes? She's buried 3 feet below where you're standing, along with great uncle, 2 cousins, and what might be an ancestor from 6 generations back. The bones get mixed up after a while. Your family's burial plot is your living room floor, which means every dinner is technically a feast with the dead. Sometimes the floor subsides a bit, and you have to replaster, trying not to think too hard about why it's sinking. Your house isn't just a living space, it's a multi-generational archaeological site. The walls are plastered and replastered hundreds of times, creating layers like tree rings. Whenever someone dies, you bury them under the sleeping platform, add another layer of plaster, and keep living. Historians still argue whether this practice was about ancestor worship or just practical space management. But you know the truth. It's both. Plus, it's weirdly comforting knowing grandma is still technically home, even if she's significantly flatter than you remember. The interior decorating choices would make modern minimalists scream. Your walls are covered with paintings of huge bulls, geometric patterns, and what can only be described as aggressively feminine imagery. Bull skulls jut from the walls, their horns perfect for hanging stuff or accidentally impaling yourself during midnight bathroom trips. Your neighbor just installed a new bear skull fixture, and now everyone's trying to one-up each other with increasingly dramatic dead animal architecture. The competition is getting weird. Daily life requires constant negotiation with your wall-sharing neighbors. Their cooking smoke drifts through cracks in the plaster. Their arguments penetrate the mud brick like it's paper. Their rhythm-intensive religious ceremonies at dawn make your whole house vibrate. You've developed an elaborate system of passive-aggressive communication through strategic roof stomping and pointed chimney smoke directing. When their baby cries all night, you retaliate by grinding grain extra early. It's petty, but it's home. The religious or ritual life is intense and invasive. Those bullhorns aren't just decoration. They're active spiritual participants in daily life. You perform small rituals before meals, before sleep, before literally stepping out onto your roof. The bare teeth embedded in your wall need weekly offerings of grain. The vulture painting above your bed demands acknowledgement every morning, or, you believe, it'll inspire actual vultures to mistake you for carrion. Superstition and daily routine are so intertwined that you can't tell where one ends and the other begins. What really breaks modern brains is how you rebuild. When your house gets too old, too full of bodies, or too structurally questionable, you don't move. You knock it down, fill it in, and build exactly the same house on top. The new house mirrors the old one so precisely that archaeologists find the same bullhorn installations in the same positions through multiple building layers. It's like you're photocopying architecture through time, maintaining patterns that might be older than your language. As you finally descend your ladder into the smoky interior, stepping carefully over the slight depression that marks Cousin Og's burial spot, you're participating in an urban experiment that won't be repeated for millennia. This hive-like, roof-walking, ancestor floor lifestyle is uniquely yours. Future humans will invent streets and privacy and windows that don't double as doors. but they'll never experience the bizarre intimacy of knowing exactly what your neighbor had for dinner, based on the smoke wafting through your shared wall. They'll never understand the comfort of literally living above your ancestors, or the athletic prowess required just to visit someone 3 houses over. You're living in humanity's first and weirdest apartment complex, and somehow, impossibly, it works. You're clinging to a hollowed-out log that's pretending to be a boat, while waves taller than your standing height slam into you with casual violence. The shore disappeared hours ago, and now there's just water in every direction, which seemed like less of a problem when you started this journey. Your cousin is bailing water with a turtle shell while your brother paddles with something that's half ore, half religious artifact. This is humanity's first age of exploration, and your navigation equipment consists of reading wave patterns, following birds, and pure wishful thinking. The mainstream fact that anthropologists love to mention is that humans reached Australia at least 50,000 years ago, which required serious ocean crossings. But you're living through the tail end of this maritime madness, around 10,000 years ago, when sea levels are rising and creating new islands faster than you can explore them. What used to be land bridges are now underwater. And your grandfather's stories about walking to distant lands sound like fantasy. Now reaching those same places requires trusting your life to what's essentially a carved tree trunk with delusions of seaworthiness. Your boat building technique would give modern safety inspectors nightmares. Start with a decent-sized tree, preferably one that already has some hollow rot, because who has time to carve an entire log? Burn out the inside while trying not to set the whole thing on fire. Scrape the charred bits with shells and sharp stones. Seal the cracks with tree resin mixed with, honestly, whatever seems sticky. Your culture's secret ingredient is bear fat mixed with crushed beetles that creates a waterproof seal that lasts exactly long enough to maybe get you where you're going. The quirky tidbit. Some groups are experimenting with outriggers, side floats that make the boat more stable, but also more likely to snap apart in rough seas. Innovation is a double-edged paddle. Navigation is where things get properly mystical. You're following a mental map passed down through songs that encode wave patterns, star positions, and the flight paths of specific seabirds. Your navigator, usually someone who survived enough ocean journeys to be considered either blessed or too stubborn to die, reads the ocean like you read facial expressions. That subtle change in wave rhythm. It means there's an island about a day's paddle to the southeast. Those clouds piling up on the horizon. They're reflecting the lagoon of an atoll you can't see yet. The phosphorescent algae glowing in your wake. That's just pretty, but you'll take any good omens you can get. The real adventure starts when you discover an island nobody's seen before. Virgin beaches, forests full of birds that have never learned to fear humans, and plants that might be food or might kill you. Only one way to find out. Your first priority is fresh water, because as you've learned from 3 days of drinking sea spray, the ocean is basically nature's way of surrounding you with undrinkable mockery. You dig wells, follow bird flights to springs, and sometimes just pray for rain while licking dew off leaves like some kind of desperate jungle creature. Historians still argue whether these voyages were intentional exploration or accidental drift events. Living it, you know it's both. Sometimes you're deliberately seeking new fishing grounds or following rumors of islands where valuable shells grow. Other times, you're just trying to reach the next known island when a storm hits, and suddenly you're discovering new lands whether you wanted to or not. Your uncle discovered 3 new islands this way, though he also lost 2 boats and most of his crew. So the success rate is mixed. The colonization process is hilariously haphazard. You land on a pristine island paradise and immediately start making it worse. Those flightless birds that walk right up to you. They're delicious and easy to catch, which means they'll be extinct within a generation. The native plants get cleared for your imported crops, which may or may not grow in this new soil. You brought rats accidentally and pigs intentionally, and both are about to absolutely destroy the local ecosystem. Future ecologists will weep at the damage you're causing. But right now, you're just trying not to starve on this beautiful prison of an island. Inter-island politics are developing in real time. That island visible on clear days. They have the best obsidian but terrible fishing. Your island has amazing shellfish but no good stone for tools. Thus begins the world's first international trade conducted entirely by people who might drown at any moment. You're developing elaborate gift exchange ceremonies where valuable items move between islands in a complex dance of obligation and reciprocity. Mess up the protocol and you might start the world's first naval war, fought with thrown spears and really aggressive paddle work. The spiritual aspect of ocean travel can't be overstated. The sea has moods, personalities, and apparently a sick sense of humor. You make offerings before every voyage, the good shells, not the broken ones, because the ocean knows when you're being cheap. Your boat has protective symbols carved into every surface, and you wear amulets made from the bones of successful sailors. Tins. When dolphins appear, it's a good sign. When they suddenly disappear, you start paddling faster and don't ask questions. The ocean gives and takes with equal indifference, and you're just hoping today it's feeling generous. As you finally spot land, real land, not just clouds pretending to be islands, your relief is mixed with pride. You've crossed the uncrossable, found the unfindable, and lived to brag about it. Your grandchildren will tell stories about this voyage, probably exaggerating the wave heights and the number of sea monsters. They'll use better boats with actual sails instead of prayers, navigate with more precision than "that way looks promising," and still probably die in roughly the same percentages. Because the ocean doesn't care about technological progress. It was vast and indifferent when you started exploring it, and it'll remain vast and indifferent long after your bones are coral. But for now, you've won this round. And that island ahead better have fresh water and something edible, or this is going to be a very short colonization. You're standing knee-deep in water where your winter camp used to be, staring at the lake that definitely wasn't here last season. The glaciers are having a temper tantrum of epic proportions, and their meltwater has opinions about where you thought you'd be living. Your grandfather's stories about the permanent ice sound like fiction now as you watch actual icebergs float by, carrying confused polar foxes. This is climate change before it was cool, or rather, as it's becoming drastically warmer, and you're living through Earth's most dramatic mood swing. The mainstream fact every school kid learns is that the last ice age ended around 11,700 years ago, but you're experiencing the messy reality. It's not a smooth transition from cold to warm. It's decades of weather whiplash that makes planning anything beyond next week feel like cosmic gambling. 1 year. The summers are so hot that rivers you've known since childhood simply evaporate, leaving fish flopping in muddy memories. The next year, winter arrives early and angry, freezing those same reformed rivers solid enough to walk mammoths across, if there were any mammoths left to walk. What the historians still argue about is the younger dryers, a sudden cold snap that interrupted the warming trend like nature's way of saying, just kidding. You're living through the tail end of this climatic practical joke, where temperatures plunge back to ice age levels for about 1,000 years before abruptly warming again. Your tribe's oral histories are basically a compilation of weather complaints. The year the lake appeared overnight, the summer that forgot to happen, that winter when the ice made those horrible groaning sounds before the flood, the quirky tidbit that future scientists will obsess over. This climate chaos might have forced humans to invent agriculture, when the animals you've been following for generations suddenly change their migration patterns or go extinct, and the plants you've been gathering fruit from die off or relocate to different altitudes. You're forced to get creative. That's why you're knee-deep in an unexpected lake, trying to figure out if those seeds you saved from last year will grow in this new, wetter reality. Necessity isn't just the mother of invention. She's the stressed-out single parent of civilization. Your seasonal calendar is now purely theoretical. Spring might arrive 2 months early or skip entirely. Summer could last 4 months or 4 weeks, or fall sometimes forgets to happen, jumping straight from blazing heat to surprise blizzards. Winter is anyone's guess, mild enough to confuse hibernating bears into early emergence, or so severe that you find perfectly frozen humans from neighboring tribes who got caught in sudden temperature drops. You're developing a complex system of environmental signs that's more anxiety than science. When these birds fly south, winter might be coming. When those plants bloom, flooding is possible. When the elders' joints ache in that specific way, prepare for anything. The megafauna exodus is particularly depressing. Those giant beavers that used to dam entire valleys, their engineering projects can't keep up with the rapidly changing water levels, and their lodges become death traps when unexpected droughts hit. The last mammoth herd you encountered looked scraggly and confused, their usual feeding grounds now either underwater or transformed into forests where their bulk is a disadvantage. You watch species that have existed for hundreds of thousands of years simply stop, not in some dramatic extinction event, but in a slow fade as they fail to adapt quickly enough to Earth's new mood. Sea level rise is creating interesting opportunities for the brave or stupid. What used to be coastal hunting grounds are now offshore islands, accessible only by those hollow log boats that nobody entirely trusts. Some enterprising relatives have set up camp on these new islands, figuring isolation might protect them from both climate chaos and neighboring tribes' drama. They row back occasionally with exotic shells and stories about fish that don't exist on the mainland. Half your tribe thinks they're geniuses. The other half is taking bets on when the sea will claim those islands too. The flooding events deserve their own oral history genre. These aren't seasonal floods you can plan around. They're surprise water apocalypses. Glacial ice dams form, holding back impossible amounts of meltwater, then catastrophically fail. You've seen walls of water carrying actual icebergs sweep through valleys, rearranging geography like a deity having a tantrum. The flood that created your current unwanted lake probably happened in less than a day, transforming familiar hunting grounds into an aquatic nightmare complete with rapidly evolving mosquito populations. Adaptation strategies range from clever to desperate. Some groups are following the ice retreat north, figuring cold-adapted megafauna might survive longer there. Others are heading to higher ground, establishing camps at altitudes that used to be uninhabitable, but now offer stable temperatures. Your group is trying the radical approach of staying put and just dealing with whatever weather insanity occurs. This involves a lot of temporary structures, portable everything, and the kind of psychological flexibility that comes from never knowing if tomorrow will bring drought, flood, ice, or all three. As you wade through your former home, salvaging what you can while planning where to relocate, camp this time, You're unconsciously participating in humanity's first climate adaptation program. The weather patterns that your ancestors memorized and passed down through countless generations are now as useful as mammoth hunting techniques, technically impressive, but practically obsolete. You're writing new rules, developing new survival strategies, and creating the kind of resilient, adaptable culture that will eventually build cities and civilizations. But right now, you'd settle for dry feet and a climate that could make up its mind for more than a season at a time. You're walking for the 7th day straight, feet wrapped in leather that's more whole than hide, carrying a pack of obsidian that weighs approximately as much as a dead deer, but is somehow worth more. The sharp volcanic glass chunks dig into your back with every step, reminding you why traders developed that distinctive hunched walk by age 30. Your destination is still days away, a coastal settlement where people speak a language that sounds like gargling rocks and value your black glass more than food. This is commerce before money, and you're a walking geological commodity exchange. The mainstream fact archaeologists love is that obsidian from specific volcanic sources has been found hundreds of miles from its origin, proving extensive trade networks existed. But you know the unglamorous reality. This isn't some organized merchant expedition. You're basically a guy with a good sense of direction and questionable judgment, hoping the shells you'll get in trade are worth the foot fungus you're definitely developing. Your trade route is a series of vaguely remembered landmarks, and the prayer that those river crossings haven't flooded since last year. What makes this journey worthwhile is the exchange rate, which operates on principles that would baffle future economists. Those purple shells from the coast, absolutely worthless there. Kids use them as toys, but carry them inland for 2 weeks, and suddenly they're sacred objects that ensure fertile harvests. Your obsidian, formed in volcanic flows that your people consider the blood of earth spirits, is just sharp rock to you. But coastal peoples, living in a volcanic-free paradise, treat it like crystallized magic. The quirky tidbit historians still argue about. Whether this value differential was understood and exploited consciously, or just happened through cultural accident. Having walked this route 12 times, you're definitely exploiting it consciously. Your trading kit is anthropology's fever dream. Besides the obsidian, you're carrying red ochre from that sacred cliff 2 valleys back. Some particularly attractive river pebbles that inland folks think have healing properties, and dried mushrooms that may or may not have psychoactive properties. You're not entirely sure, but coastal shellmans pay premium shells for them. Everything is wrapped in bark, tied with sinew, and waterproofed with pine resin that's melting in the heat and making everything smell like a forest fire. Navigation between cultural zones requires more than geographic knowledge. 3 days into your journey, you're entering territory where your hand gestures mean completely different things. That friendly wave you just gave. Here it means, I'm carrying disease. You learn these things the hard way. Each group along your route has specific greeting rituals, taboo colors, and strong opinions about which direction you should approach their settlement from. Mess up the protocol and best case, they charge you tourist prices. Worst case involves running very fast while people throw things at your head. The actual trade negotiations are theatre mixed with psychology. You never show how much you want something. That's rookie mistake number 1. Instead, you disparage your own goods while praising theirs. Then act reluctantly convinced to make an exchange. They're doing the same dance, of course. Everyone knows obsidian is valuable and shells are valuable. But the elaborate pantomime of, I suppose I could spare one small piece, and these shells are my grandmother's favorites, but maybe, must be performed. It's exhausting, but rushing trades marks you as either desperate or socially incompetent, both resulting in terrible exchange rates. What really complicates things is the web of obligations you're creating. That family who fed you last time when you arrived during a storm, you owe them, and they'll remember. The young woman who translated when you accidentally insulted the local chieftain, she gets first pick of your shells. These social debts accumulate across dozens of settlements, creating an invisible ledger that you carry alongside your physical goods. Historians still argue whether this represents primitive capitalism or something entirely different. Having to remember who owes what to whom across a 1,000-mile network, you'd argue it's just complicated. The most valuable trade item isn't in your pack, it's in your head. Stories, songs, technologies, and gossip flow along trade routes faster than any physical goods. You're carrying news that the northern tribes have figured out a better way to hafting stone tools. The eastern settlements are dealing with a disease that causes red spots, and everybody everywhere is talking about those crazy farmers trying to grow food instead of finding it. Your evening entertainment value alone ensures welcome at most settlements. People will feed you just to hear about what's happening 3 valleys away. Risk management is mostly hoping nothing goes wrong. Bandits are less common than animals that want to eat you or geological features that want to kill you. That river crossing that was knee-deep last season is now a raging torrent requiring careful negotiation with local ferry operators, 2 guys with a decent log. The mountain pass that offered spectacular views also offers spectacular opportunities to fall off cliffs. Your cousin started this route with you 5 years ago. You don't talk about why you now travel alone, but his obsidian blade hanging from your belt serves as both tool and memorial. As you finally approach the coastal settlement, smelling salt air mixed with the distinctive odor of people who eat primarily shellfish, you're already calculating. The obsidian should get you enough purple shells to make the inland journey worthwhile. Those shells will trade for winter furs from the mountain people. The furs can go to the river settlements for dried fish and pottery. It's an endless cycle that keeps you moving, keeps goods flowing, and keeps different cultures connected through the simple principle that everyone wants what they don't have. You're not just a trader, you're a human supply chain, a walking ambassador, and probably developing arthritis from all this walking. But when you see the amazement in a child's eyes as they hold obsidian for the first time, or watch an inland elder cradle a sacred shell with reverence, you remember why you do this. Plus, the profit margins are insane if you survive the journey. You're staring at the mushy grain porridge that's been sitting in a ceramic pot for way too long, and it's doing something weird, bubbling, fizzing, smelling like your uncle after he eats too many fermented berries. Your first instinct is to throw it out, but you're hungry. It's been a tough winter, and frankly, you've eaten worse. So you take a tentative sip of humanity's first homebrew, and suddenly the world gets a little wobblier and significantly more interesting. Congratulations, you've just discovered alcohol, and life is about to get simultaneously better and much more complicated. The mainstream fact is that evidence of fermented beverages dates back to at least 9,000 years ago in China, with residues of rice, honey, and fruit concoctions found in pottery. But you're living through the sloppy experimental phase where nobody really understands what's happening. Sometimes grain left in water produces a drink that makes everyone happy and social. Other times it produces a drink that makes everyone violently ill. The line between brewery and poison factory is thinner than your cousin's hairline, and you're the quality control department. Your brewing technique is less craft beer and more controlled rot. Take some grain, wheat, barley, whatever didn't get eaten or planted. Chew it for a while to break down the starches. Yes, your saliva is a key ingredient. Try not to think about it too hard. Spit the chewed grain into a pot with water. Add some honey if you're feeling fancy, or some crushed fruits if they're available. Leave it somewhere warm and pray to whatever fermentation spirits control this process. The quirky tidbit? Some groups are adding psychoactive plants to their brews, creating combinations that make modern Four Loko look like chamomile tea. The social revolution this accidental discovery triggers is immediate. Suddenly, gatherings have a new centerpiece. That awkward meeting with the neighboring tribe to discuss water rights? Much smoother when everyone's sipping fermented grain juice. The tense negotiations over hunting territories. Amazingly, people are more willing to compromise after a few gourds of fruit wine. You're discovering that alcohol is humanity's first social lubricant, making everything from religious ceremonies to matchmaking simultaneously easier and more prone to dramatic failure. What historians still argue about is whether agriculture started because of alcohol. Did humans settle down to grow grain for bread or for beer? Living through it, you suspect it's the beer. Bread fills your stomach, but beer fills your stomach and makes you forget that your new agricultural lifestyle involves backbreaking work and living next to the same annoying neighbors forever. That cousin who won't shut up about his superior seed planting technique? Much more tolerable after a few drinks. The endless grain grinding feels almost meditative when you're slightly buzzed. The spiritual significance of fermentation can't be overstated. This transformation of simple ingredients into mind-altering substances is clearly magic. Shamans incorporate fermented drinks into their rituals, claiming it helps them travel between worlds. Regular folks just know it helps them tolerate their in-laws during extended family gatherings. You're developing an entire mythology around brewing. The fermentation spirits who must be appeased, the proper songs to sing while stirring, the taboos around who can touch the brewing pots. Pregnant women and anyone who's recently handled the dead are definitely out. Quality control remains hilariously inconsistent. Your latest batch might produce mild euphoria and enhanced storytelling abilities, or it might produce what your tribe calls the spinning death. You're learning through trial and error that temperature matters, ingredient ratios matter, and that weird film that sometimes forms on top should probably be removed unless you want everyone to spend the next day questioning their life choices. Some batches are so good they become legendary, referenced in stories for generations. Others are quietly poured out while making promises to the fermentation spirits to do better next time. The economic implications are staggering. Suddenly, you have a product that everyone wants, but not everyone can make successfully. Your neighbor's daughter has a gift for brewing. Her fermented honey drink is smooth, consistent, and only occasionally causes temporary blindness. She's leveraging this skill into serious social capital, trading her brew for prime cuts of meat, beautiful shells, and first pick of potential marriage partners. The elderly woman 3 houses down claims her family has been brewing for generations and charges premium rates for her traditional recipe, which you suspect she invented last season. Gender dynamics around alcohol are evolving in real time. Women often control brewing because they control grain processing and notice when things start fermenting. Men often control the resulting parties because they control. Actually, nobody controls the parties once the drinking starts. You're establishing cultural norms about who drinks what, when, and how much through spectacular failures. That time the entire hunting party got drunk before a mammoth hunt. Yeah, policies were established after that disaster. As you perfect your brewing technique through delicious trial and catastrophic error, you're unknowingly creating one of humanity's most enduring relationships. Future civilizations will build entire industries around fermentation, develop elaborate rules about alcohol consumption, and create both beautiful art and terrible decisions under its influence. Religions will incorporate wine into sacred rituals. Kingdoms will rise and fall over control of vineyards, and millions of humans will wake up wondering why they thought dancing on that particular table was a good idea. But right now, you're just happy you found something that makes grain storage problems occasionally turn into opportunities, and that makes social gatherings slightly less likely to end in bloodshed. The fact that it also makes your cousin's stories about catching fish this big actually entertaining, that's just a bonus. Welcome to the blurry dawn of drinking culture, where every batch is an adventure and hangovers haven't been invented yet, because every day is already physically painful. Cheers, or as you say while raising your gourd of questionable brew, may this not be the batch that kills us. You're watching your sister lead the mammoth hunt, while your brother stays back at camp teaching children which berries will kill them. And nobody finds this arrangement strange. This is life before rigid gender roles crystallized into the oppressive structures future humans will pretend are natural. Your daughter is learning flint knapping from the tribe's best toolmaker, a woman with scarred hands and infinite patience, while your son is mastering the art of basket weaving from his uncle, the mainstream historical fact that anthropologists whisper about at conferences. Many hunter-gatherer societies were surprisingly egalitarian, with gender roles more flexible than Victorian scholars wanted to admit. The division of labor in your group is practical rather than ideological. Yes, women tend to gather more because pregnancy and breastfeeding make chasing wounded aurochses impractical. But your aunt killed more large game than anyone before her joints started complaining. Men often hunt because upper body strength helps with spear throwing, but your cousin's throwing arm is pathetic, and everyone knows he's better at finding medicinal plants. The quirky tidbit historians still argue about? Some skeletal evidence suggests women participated in big game hunts way more than previously thought. Those assumptions about man the hunter, woman the gatherer. Your lived reality is laughing at those future oversimplifications. Leadership structures are fascinatingly fluid. Your band doesn't have a chief so much as a rotating cast of whoever knows best about the current problem. Tracking animals. Follow grey elk, whose gender is honestly unclear and nobody cares because they can find deer in a snowstorm. Mediating disputes. That's Grandmother Crow's domain. And her word is law because she remembers everyone's embarrassing childhood incidents. Planning seasonal moves. 3 Rabbits leads those discussions, balancing her infant on one hip while drawing migration routes in the dirt with her free hand. Competence trumps anatomy every time. What really makes archaeologists' heads explode is the evidence of female shamans. Warriors and traders. Your spiritual leader, the one who guides souls through death and interprets dreams. She's a mother of 4 who conducts ceremonies while keeping one eye on her toddler. The best fighter in your confederation of bands. The person everyone wants beside them during territorial disputes. Transitioned from female to male social roles years ago, and nobody questioned it because their spearwork speaks for itself. Gender fluidity isn't some modern invention. It's Tuesday in your world. Child rearing is a community sport with surprisingly little concern for biological parentage. Kids need food, protection, and education, and whoever's available provides it. Your son might be nursing from his aunt because you're out setting traps. Your daughter learns hunting songs from an elder who might or might not be her biological grandfather. Genealogy gets fuzzy when everyone's related somehow. The phrase, "it takes a village," isn't inspirational poster material. It's literal survival strategy. Men nurturing children isn't considered emasculating because masculine identity isn't tied to emotional constipation yet. The sexual politics are refreshingly straightforward. People partner up based on compatibility, survival skills, and whether they can tolerate each other during long winters. Some couples are man-woman, some are same gender, and some arrangements involve multiple people, because jealousy is a luxury you can't afford when survival requires cooperation. That complicated polyamorous situation in the neighboring band, where 3 women and 2 men share a dwelling. As long as they contribute to group survival and don't create too much drama, nobody cares. Future anthropologists will tie themselves in knots trying to explain away the evidence. Reproductive knowledge is sophisticated in ways that will be forgotten and rediscovered. Women track their fertility through moon phases, body temperature, and cervical changes with accuracy that rivals modern methods. Herbal contraceptives and abortifacients are quietly shared knowledge because spacing pregnancies is crucial when you're nomadic. Men participate in childcare from birth because a crying baby during a hunt endangers everyone. The idea that men can't handle infants would get you laughed out of camp. Everyone here has soothed a colicky baby while simultaneously watching for predators. Age brings respect regardless of gender. The postmenopausal women in your group are powerhouses, freed from pregnancy risks. They often become the most daring hunters and travelers. Elderly men teach plant lore and craft skills to anyone interested. The rigid age-gender hierarchies that agricultural societies will develop don't make sense when your survival depends on utilizing everyone's skills efficiently. Your grandmother might be toothless, but she knows 17 ways to prepare acorns and remembers where water sources hide during droughts. What's already starting to change as some groups experiment with settlement and farming is telling. Those cousins who started growing grain. Their women spend more time grinding seeds while men clear fields, beginning the labor specialization that will eventually calcify into tradition. Property ownership creates inheritance concerns that make paternity suddenly important. Stored food wealth enables some people to have more resources than others, creating power imbalances that follow household lines. You're watching gender equality erode in real time and finding it deeply weird. Historians still argue whether this egalitarianism was universal or varied by region, but living it, you know it's about practicality. When survival is uncertain, you can't afford to waste half your population's potential on arbitrary rules. Your daughter might discover the migration pattern that saves the group from starvation. Your son's basket weaving innovation might revolutionize food storage. Rigid gender roles are a luxury for people with enough food security to be picky about who does what. Right now, you need everyone doing everything they're good at, regardless of which genitals they were born with. The future's gender prison is still under construction, and you're too busy surviving to help build it. You're holding your cousin down while the medicine woman positions a flint drill against his skull, and everyone involved is pretending this is totally normal. His headaches have been getting worse since that mammoth hunting incident, where he zigged when he should have zagged. And now, there's apparently an evil spirit trapped in his head that needs an exit hole. The drilling starts, bone dust mixing with blood, and your cousin's scream suggests the evil spirit isn't going quietly. This is medicine before anyone understood infection, bacteria, or the radical concept that maybe drilling holes in heads isn't always the solution. The mainstream fact that makes modern doctors queasy is that trepanation, skull drilling, was surprisingly common and, even more surprisingly, survivable. The skulls showing healing prove people lived through this prehistoric brain surgery, sometimes multiple times. Your tribe's medicine woman has performed 12 of these operations, and 8 patients survived, which makes her basically the top neurosurgeon of 10,000 BCE. The quirky tidbit? Some groups seem to have done this for spiritual reasons, even when nothing was medically wrong, suggesting either remarkable faith in their surgeons or a very different relationship with recreational skull holes. Your dental situation is a catastrophe waiting to happen. Those ground grains you've been eating since agriculture became trendy. They're full of tiny stone particles from the grinding process, wearing your teeth down to nubs. Your mouth is basically a bacterial rave party. When teeth go bad, and they always go bad, the options are limited. The dental specialist, a terrifying elder with steady hands and no concept of anesthesia, will try to yank the offending tooth using tools that look more suited to crafting than surgery. You've seen grown warriors cry during extractions, and you're pretty sure those prayers to the tooth spirits are just begging for unconsciousness. The medicine woman's toolkit would horrify and fascinate future archaeologists. Stone scalpels sharper than modern steel, but prone to shattering mid-operation. Bone needles for stitching wounds with sinew thread that sometimes causes more infection than it prevents. Herbs and poultices that represent thousands of years of trial and fatal error, some genuinely effective, others actively harmful, and nobody's quite sure which is which. That green paste that numbs pain? Incredible discovery. The red powder that draws out evil? It's basically just causing chemical burns, and everyone's too polite to mention it. What historians still argue about is how much prehistoric people understood about anatomy. Your medicine woman can set bones with impressive skill, stitch wounds that would otherwise be fatal, and even perform basic surgery. But she also believes the heart is where thoughts live. The liver controls courage, and babies come from women eating special seeds. It's a mixture of practical knowledge and spectacular misconceptions that somehow works often enough to seem legitimate. When she successfully delivers a breech baby after hours of repositioning, nobody questions her theory that difficult births are caused by the baby trying to climb back up to the spirit world. Herbal medicine is surprisingly sophisticated and terrifyingly random. Every plant in your territory has been tested on some unfortunate ancestor, and the knowledge is passed down through songs that encode dosages, preparations, and warnings. Willow bark for pain, that actually works. Moldy bread on wounds, accidentally discovering penicillin thousands of years early. Poisonous mushrooms in tiny doses for vision journeys. Technically medicine if you squint and tilt your head. The margin between medicine and poison is basically the medicine woman's mood and memory on any given day. The spiritual component of healing can't be separated from the physical treatments. Every medical procedure involves elaborate rituals to appease the illness spirits, convince the body spirits to cooperate, and generally create enough psychological placebo effect to boost actual recovery. Your cousin's skull drilling comes with 3 days of preparatory ceremonies, including painting his entire body with symbols that supposedly guide the drill away from important soul bits. The fact that this also gives everyone time to psychologically prepare for potential death is probably not coincidental. Pregnancy and childbirth are where medical knowledge gets intensely practical. Women attend dozens of births before their own. learning positions that ease delivery, herbs that slow bleeding, and massage techniques that help babies turn. The mortality statistics would appall modern obstetricians. But considering you're working without antibiotics, surgery, or even basic understanding of germs, the success rate is remarkable. The midwife's ability to reach inside and manually reposition a stuck baby has saved countless lives. Even if her explanation involving moon phases and river spirits is creative fiction, wound treatment varies from surprisingly effective to accidentally homicidal. Honey on wounds? Excellent antimicrobial choice. Packed mud? Depends entirely on where that mud came from. Cauterization with hot stones stops bleeding, but creates exciting new infection opportunities. The practice of keeping wounds covered versus letting them breathe is hotly debated, with different healers swearing by opposite approaches. You've survived 3 major injuries using 3 completely different treatment methods, which either proves they all work or you're just incredibly lucky. The most successful medical practitioners combine genuine skill with psychological manipulation. Your medicine woman's confident demeanor does half the healing. Patients who believe they'll recover often do. Her theatrical rituals, mysterious potions, and dramatic pronouncements create an atmosphere where healing feels possible. When she declares someone will die, they usually do, though whether that's prophecy or suggestion remains unclear. The handful of times she's been wrong become legendary stories of patients too stubborn for the spirits to take. As your cousin gradually recovers from his skull drilling, apparently the evil spirit has fled through the new hole. You're witnessing humanity's first attempts at systematic healthcare. It's messy, painful, and based on theories that are creative interpretations of reality at best. But it's also the beginning of medical knowledge, the first steps toward understanding how bodies work and how to fix them when they break. Every success gets encoded in oral tradition. Every failure teaches what not to do next time. You're beta testing medicine, and the bug reports are written in scars and survival stories. You're lying on your back in the frost-covered grass, teeth chattering, watching the stars wheel overhead in their eternal dance, while your teacher points out the patterns you need to memorize. This constellation rises when the salmon run begins. That one sets when it's time to move to winter grounds. The position of these stars tells you when the berries ripen 3 valleys away. Your brain is struggling to hold all this information, especially since your teacher insists on explaining it through elaborate stories involving divine hunters, celestial bears, and romantic dramas between stellar deities that would make future soap operas look understated. The mainstream fact is that prehistoric humans were sophisticated astronomers by necessity, tracking celestial movements with accuracy that rivals early civilizations. But you're living the unglamorous reality, memorizing star positions while freezing your ass off, trying to distinguish between similar-looking star groups, and wondering why the ancestors couldn't have picked more obvious patterns. That cluster your teacher calls the Great Mammoth. It looks more like scattered rice to you, but suggesting this earns you a whack with her walking stick and a lecture about disrespecting the sky spirits. Your calendar system is simultaneously brilliant and maddening. 13 lunar months that almost but don't quite match the solar year, requiring periodic adjustments that nobody fully understands. The keeper of the calendar, a perpetually stressed woman who inherited the job from her equally stressed mother, makes marks on bone tablets and mutters about correction days that seem to move around based on criteria involving moon phases, bird migrations, and her personal interpretation of cloud formations. Historians still argue whether these were true leap year calculations or just ad hoc fixes. But living with it, you know it's organized chaos at best. The quirky tidbit that archaeologists love discovering: some groups are building monuments aligned with celestial events. Those standing stones your cousins are erecting 2 valleys over aren't random. They mark sunrise positions throughout the year. Your own tribe has a more portable system: painted hides with hole patterns that align with specific stars when held up at night. It's like a prehistoric PowerPoint presentation. Assuming PowerPoint required you to stand in exact positions at specific times while squinting through tiny holes and arguing about whether that's the navigator star or just a bright planet. Predicting seasons isn't just academic exercise, it's survival. Miss the timing for salmon runs or caribou migrations, and your family starves. Plant seeds too early or too late, and your agricultural experiment fails. The pressure on calendar keepers is intense. When your tribe's astronomer correctly predicts an eclipse, she's treated like a god. When she miscalculates the arrival of spring by 3 weeks, people start muttering about finding a new skywatcher. The job security in prehistoric astronomy depends entirely on celestial cooperation. Lunar observations are particularly crucial for the women tracking fertility cycles. The connection between moon phases and menstruation isn't perfect, but it's close enough that moon days become standard terminology. Women paint small marks on personal items to track their cycles alongside lunar phases, creating the world's first period tracking apps in bone and ochre. The moon's influence on tides, animal behavior, and human biology is noted even if not understood. That crazy full moon energy everyone complains about, you're documenting it thousands of years before anyone invents the word lunacy. The intersection of astronomy and spirituality is where things get properly weird. Those star patterns aren't just navigation tools, they're literally gods walking across the sky. The Milky Way might be the path souls travel after death, or the smoke from the celestial campfire, or the backbone of the sky serpent, depending on which elder you ask. Planetary movements are interpreted as divine messages. That red wanderer, Mars, moving backward. Clearly, the war god is reconsidering something important. Better postpone that raid you were planning. Timekeeping methods are creatively diverse. Shadow sticks for daily time, assuming it's not cloudy. Water drips for measuring shorter durations, assuming it's not frozen. Heartbeats for counting seconds, assuming you're not terrified or exhausted. Your cousin invented a sand flow timer that almost works, except sand isn't uniform and the flow rate changes with humidity. The concept of standardized time units is still millennia away, so meet me when the sun is 3 hands above the horizon has to suffice, leading to countless missed connections and arguments about hand size. The most impressive feat is passing this knowledge down without writing. Everything is encoded in stories, songs, and physical demonstrations that must be memorized perfectly. One garbled verse about star positions could throw off planting times for generations. The pressure on young apprentices is immense. You're not just learning astronomy, you're becoming a living library of celestial knowledge. Forget a detail about which star rises before dawn in early summer, and people might starve. No pressure. Regional variations in astronomical knowledge create interesting conflicts. Your southern relatives swear by a constellation you can barely see from your latitude. The northern tribes have names for stars you've never noticed. When groups meet to trade, astronomical arguments break out. Is that the great hunter or the sky bison? Does the moon control tides, or do tides control the moon? These debates can last days. with each group's astronomer drawing increasingly complex diagrams in the dirt, while everyone else places bets on who'll give up first. As dawn approaches and your lesson ends, your teacher times everything to conclude as specific stars fade. You're carrying humanity's first scientific tradition in your frozen, tired brain. This knowledge represents thousands of years of observation, pattern recognition, and careful recording without writing. Every clear night, someone has watched, noted, and passed on what they've seen. You're a link in an unbroken chain stretching back to the first human who looked up and wondered if those lights might mean something. The fact that you're also wondering if you can feel your toes anymore doesn't diminish the profundity. You're an astronomer, a calendar keeper, a navigator by starlight. Also, you're really cold and breakfast better be warm. You're sitting around the fire listening to your grandmother tell the story of how the world began. And she's using a complex grammatical structure that indicates this happened in the far, far away time, which is different from the faraway time when great-grandfather fought the cave bear, which is different from yesterday time when you burnt the fish. Your language has 17 different ways to indicate when something happened, 12 forms of plural depending on what you're counting, and a special grammatical mood used only for speaking to your mother-in-law. This is humanity's linguistic golden age, where every small group is developing mind-bendingly complex ways to encode their reality into sound. The mainstream fact linguists grudgingly accept is that prehistoric languages were likely just as complex as modern ones, possibly more so. Your daily speech involves clicking sounds, tonal variations that completely change meaning, and grammatical gender systems that assign personality to rocks. The quirky tidbit historians still argue about? Some reconstructed prehistoric language features are so elaborate that modern linguists literally can't pronounce them properly. You're casually using sound combinations that will be completely lost to history, like that thing you do with your uvula to indicate skepticism about someone's hunting story. What's really exploding is vocabulary. Your grandparents had maybe 100 words for core survival concepts. You have thousands, including specialized terms for different stages of ice formation, varieties of mud, and subtle emotional states that won't have English equivalents for millennia. The word for the feeling when you think you see a predator, but it's just a shadow, is completely different from the relief when the shadow moves and is definitely not a predator. Future linguists will call these untranslatable, but to you, they're as basic as hungry or tired. Storytelling has evolved from simple "don't eat the red berries" warnings to epic narratives that take multiple nights to tell properly. Your grandfather is the keeper of the long story, a sprawling saga involving the origin of humans, the first hunt, why fire lives in wood, and a complicated romantic subplot between moon and sun that explains eclipses. He performs it with different voices for each character, sound effects that require 3 people to produce properly, and dramatic pauses that leave children literally holding their breath. This isn't just entertainment, it's how lore, history, science, and philosophy get transmitted. The development of metaphor is reaching poetic heights. Mountains aren't just big rocks, they're the sleeping bodies of ancient giants. Rivers aren't water channels, they're the earth's veins carrying lifeblood. This isn't primitive thinking, it's sophisticated symbolic reasoning that creates emotional connections to landscape and natural phenomena. When you say the wind is angry, you're not being literal, but you're encoding weather pattern observations in memorable, transmissible form. Your 3-year-old already understands 12 different metaphorical uses of wolf, ranging from dangerous to loyally protective. Grammar is becoming deliciously complicated. Your language distinguishes between we, meaning you and I, We meaning me and others, but not you. And we meaning all of us, including people not present. Verbs conjugate differently depending on whether you personally witnessed the action, heard about it from a reliable source, or are just guessing. There's a special grammatical construction for speaking about the dead that avoids attracting their attention. Future linguists would need spreadsheets to track what you do automatically while gutting fish. Regional dialects are emerging with stunning rapidity. Your cousins 3 valleys over have already developed a slightly different accent and use words you find hilariously wrong. They call rabbits jump ears, while your people use the obviously correct term quick meat. These differences become tribal markers. You can identify someone's origin by how they pronounce the word for water, or which clicking sound they use for disapproval. Language isn't just communication. It's identity, belonging, and occasionally the reason for intergroup mockery. The creation of new words is a spectator sport. When someone invents a particularly apt term, like your sister's word for the specific type of mud that sticks to your feet, in an annoying but not dangerous way, it spreads through the group like wildfire. Failed attempts at word creation become jokes. Your uncle's attempt to name a new tool by combining sounds from 3 existing words created an unpronounceable mess that now means trying too hard to be clever. Language play isn't frivolous. It's how vocabulary expands to match your expanding world. Translation between groups is becoming a specialized skill. Those who can speak multiple dialects fluidly gain massive social advantages, facilitating trade and preventing misunderstandings that could lead to conflict. Your nephew has an extraordinary ear for languages, picking up new dialects after just days of exposure. He's already planning to leverage this into a career as a traveling translator trader storyteller, a combination that doesn't exist yet, but he's basically inventing. The kids who grow up in mixed dialect families become natural bridges between communities. What's being lost as languages spread and merge is heartbreaking if you think about it. That clicking language your mother's people speak. Only 5 elderly speakers remain. The whistling communication system used by mountain tribes. Young people can't be bothered learning it when regular talking works fine. Entire ways of categorizing reality, embedded in grammar and vocabulary, vanish when the last speaker dies. You're simultaneously in humanity's most linguistically diverse period, and watching that diversity begin its long collapse toward linguistic homogenization. As the fire dims and grandmother's story reaches its crescendo, the part where first woman tricks Sky Father into releasing the animals, you're participating in humanity's greatest invention. Not tools, not fire, but language complex enough to share dreams, preserve memory, and create worlds that exist only in sound and meaning. Every word is a small magic, every sentence a spell that transforms thought into shared understanding. You're encoding reality into vibrations in air, and somehow other humans decode these vibrations back into meaning. It's the most sophisticated technology you possess, and you wield it as naturally as breathing. The fact that you're using it mainly to gossip about who's sleeping with whom and argue about the best way to cook orok doesn't diminish the miracle. You're a linguistic magician in an age of verbal virtuosity, even if you're currently using your powers to complain about your mother-in-law's cooking. The evening stretches on, and as grandmother's story finally winds down with the traditional ending, and that's why badgers dig and eagles soar, the younger children are already drooping against their parents, but the night's linguistic magic isn't over. Your uncle begins the word riddle game, where each person must create a puzzle using only metaphors and sound play. What walks on ice breath, carries summer in its belly, and speaks in falling water. The adults pretend to ponder, while letting the children guess. It's elk. Obviously, ice breath is winter. Summer in its belly refers to the warm meat, and falling water is the sound of antlers clashing. But the joy is in the journey of language, not the destination. Your daughter, barely 6 winters old, is already creating her own compound words. Today she invented sky-water flowers for the frost patterns on the morning grass, and everyone immediately adopted it because it's perfect. This is how language grows, not through committees or academies, but through children's creativity and adult recognition of linguistic brilliance. She beams as adults use her word, not knowing she's participating in the fundamental human act of naming the world. The complexity extends beyond spoken language. Your people have developed an intricate system of hand signals for silent communication during hunts. A subtle finger movement indicates distance, another shows direction, and combinations can convey surprisingly complex tactical information. Mammoth herd, 2 ridges over, moving north, young ones in the center, matriarch is limping, requires just 4 quick gestures. This sign language influences your spoken language too. Many words are accompanied by habitual hand movements that add layers of meaning. Memory techniques embedded in your language are astounding. The song stories use rhythm, repetition, and rhyme not just for beauty, but as error correction mechanisms. If someone misremembers a line, the broken rhythm immediately signals the mistake. The most important information, which plants heal, which kill, where water runs in drought years, gets encoded in the catchiest, most memorable verses. Your mind is a living library, and language is the cataloging system. As the night deepens and the fire burns to embers, conversations fragment into smaller groups. The teenagers huddle together, developing their own slang that drives adults crazy. They're verbing nouns and nouning verbs in ways that would horrify grandmother, but will be standard usage by the time they have children. Language isn't preserved in stone. It's a living river, constantly flowing and changing course. Today's improper usage is tomorrow's grammar rule. The philosophical implications of your complex language are staggering. You can discuss concepts like the feeling of missing someone who hasn't been born yet, or the sound silence makes when you're listening for danger. Abstract thought flowers in the fertile ground of linguistic possibility. Your shamans speak of visiting the place that is not a place, where the never-weres dance with the might-bees. This isn't nonsense. It's stretching language to encompass experiences beyond normal reality. Translation fails beautifully when your trading partner tries to explain their concept of the thing that happens when water remembers being ice. Your language has no equivalent, just as they can't grasp your term for the moment when prey realizes it's being hunted but hasn't decided which way to run. These untranslatable concepts highlight how deeply language shapes thought. You literally think differently because of the words available to you. Personal names in your language tell entire stories. Your name translates roughly to born during the storm when eagles circled 3 times, which is cumbersome in English, but a single flowing word in your tongue. Names can change throughout life to reflect major events. Your aunt was laughs at thunder until she killed a cave bear, and now she's the silence before the bear falls. Names are stories, histories, and prophecies combined. The emotional range expressible in your language makes future civilized tongues seem stunted. You have words for gradients of anger, from irritated like a fly landing repeatedly, to rage that moves mountains, each with different grammatical implications for how others should respond. The word for missing someone has 12 variants depending on why they're gone, how long they've been away, and whether you expect them to return. Your emotional vocabulary is a precision tool for navigating complex social relationships. As people drift off to their sleeping spaces, conversations fade to whispers and then to silence. But even in sleep, language continues. Some mutter dream words in ancient dialects they don't speak when awake. Children practice new sounds, their mouths moving silently as they integrate the day's linguistic lessons. Your language lives in your breath, your thoughts, your dreams. This is humanity's linguistic renaissance, happening in 10,000 locations simultaneously as small groups develop unique ways to encode their specific realities. Most of these languages will vanish without a trace, leaving no written record, no dictionary, no grammar book. They'll disappear into history like breath into wind. But right now, they're alive, complex, beautiful, and perfectly adapted to the lives you lead. You're speaking poetry with every practical sentence, encoding centuries of wisdom in casual conversation, and creating new realities with every word you invent. Tomorrow you'll wake and use this incredible tool to coordinate hunts, share gossip, teach children, negotiate trades, court lovers, and complain about the weather. The mundane and the magical intertwine in every utterance. You are the inheritor and creator of humanity's greatest technology, complex language, and you wield it with the casual mastery of someone who doesn't know they're performing miracles. Every word is an ancestor's gift and a descendant's inheritance. Every sentence is a bridge between minds. Every story told around the fire is humanity's DNA, transmitting itself through time in patterns of sound and meaning. The night settles into peaceful breathing and the occasional snore. But language never sleeps. It pulses in your dreams, evolves in your children's play, and waits to explode into tomorrow's conversations. You're a linguistic artist in an age before writing, a verbal architect building meaning from sound, a wizard whose spells actually work. And tomorrow, you'll do it all again, never knowing you're living in the golden age of human linguistic diversity, speaking languages that will leave no trace except in the shaped thoughts of your descendants who won't even know what they've lost. Sweet dreams whisper through the camp in a dozen dialects, carrying hopes in grammar that won't exist in 100 years. But tonight, they're perfect, precise and powerful. Tonight, every human is a poet, every child a word creator, every elder a library. This is what you were doing 10,000 years ago, talking, naming, storytelling, and building the foundation of everything that makes you human. The words dissolve into darkness, but their echoes will shape tomorrow's dawn, when the whole glorious symphony of language begins again. And so, as the last ember fades and the stars wheel overhead in their eternal dance, you sink into sleep surrounded by the breathing of your tribe, your family, your people, or the same stars that guided your ancestors will guide your descendants. The same human needs for food, shelter, love, and meaning will drive tomorrow's struggles and joys. You're a link in an unbroken chain stretching from the first human who looked at the world and gave it names to distant descendants who will name worlds beyond Earth. Your story, the story of humans 10,000 years ago, is one of incredible innovation and heartbreaking loss, of problems solved and new ones created, of languages born and dying, of climate chaos and human adaptation. You lived, loved, struggled, and triumphed in ways both alien and intimately familiar to modern humans. You were fully human, fully complex, fully capable of greatness and stupidity in equal measure. The fire is out now. The stories are told. The stars continue their ancient dance, indifferent to human struggles but forever intertwined with human imagination. Tomorrow brings new challenges, hunts to coordinate, trades to negotiate, children to feed, stories to tell. But tonight, in this moment between today's struggles and tomorrow's uncertainties, there is peace. Sleep well, ancient ancestor. Your descendants remember you, even if they don't know your name. Your innovations echo in their world. Your words, transformed beyond recognition, still shape their thoughts. Your struggles made their existence possible. You are not forgotten. You live on in every human who looks at the stars and wonders, who tells stories around fires real or metaphorical, who creates new words for new realities, who loves their children and hopes for better tomorrows. This is what humans were doing 10,000 years ago, being human, with all the complexity, creativity, and contradiction that entails. The details change, but the essence remains. We are still you, separated by millennia, but connected by the unbroken thread of human experience. Your story is our story, told in languages you couldn't imagine, but with meanings you'd instantly recognize. The night is deep, the stars are bright, the future is unwritten but inevitable, and somewhere in the darkness, a child stirs, dreams of tomorrow, and prepares to add their own chapter to the endless human story that began with you.